First of all, congratulations on an amazing report, and thank you, because just sort of in consuming, when we started talking the week or so before last, it was when you guys started releasing a lot of stuff, and just having consumed it, it's really meaningful research. You guys did a lot of work.
Yeah, and many thanks to the research terms. Some of them are right here in the first row. It's phenomenal how much time and effort it takes to do research and do it properly, and then to be proud of the results and then be able to publish them. So that was very exciting for us.
Yeah. Well, but I think what's really important is it's not just proud of the results for you and your business. I mean,
for the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely right, yeah.
And to sort of draft off of, the leadership position that Marcianne took in Cannes, I think it's pretty great. So I think holistically, let's just I think pause for a minute, because I think what is very important about where you and your teams are at a moment in time within Spotlight and just Freewheel and Comcast in general is you guys are saying, we're not just going to have an opinion. We're going to take a position and start to lead and invest and carry this industry through to the next step, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we did that. We launched that in Cannes with the On Addressability initiative. It was really about taking a leadership position in terms of what is addressability, what are the standards, and like Tim was asking for, that's what we're bringing forth. And we partnered with Charter and Cox, and there's quite a number of others who have raised their hand and said, hey, we want to be part of that too, because we need to holistically put that forth for all the agencies and advertisers out there.
So if we can just maybe unpack a little bit of the research for a minute, I think the big, sort of unveil or aha is like, people are watching more TV. Because we focus all on sub attrition, right? We talk all about subscriber growth or decline. That's the sort of the sky is falling, perspective of trade press. But the reality is people are watching more linear television.
Yeah, not only they're watching it more, but for longer periods of time. So the first thing we saw was that the average television viewer in the Comcast household is watching television for about 6 hours and 25 minutes every day. I mean, just phenomenal. I wish I had that much free time to watch television. But it's remarkable also, and some of that driving force is video on demand. So we're seeing a huge increase. In 2016, compared to 2019, we saw twice the amount of volume in terms of VOD. And that's up 36% over the prior year. So it's just amazing to think there's so much more content out there, no surprise, right? And there was a report that showed that in 2018, there was about 495 scripted content programs out there. So, when you think about content as king, it's really content discovery, and the Xfinity platform and the like that we have at Comcast Advertising enables you to navigate through that. And so it becomes so important for us not only to recognize there's more and more content out there for the viewers, but there's more and more options in terms of how they can view that content as well.
So the volume of content, and I have the report here. I'm going to look for the number. It's like 100,000 years, or the equivalent billion hours you guys measured or something.
The study we did for the first quarter of 2019 covered 9 billion hours. And I have to be honest, I had to double look at that number.
Billion,
yeah, we do that, whatever. The Austin Powers, 1 million to 9 billion. Yeah, exactly. And it just shows the depth and the breadth and how seriously we take the data that we have access to and use it to ensure that we're saying all the right things to the right people. Because it's so important not to have just surface knowledge, but really to dive deep into all of those insights and then be able to report on them. And not just for the benefit of Comcast, but for the benefit of television in general, because it's so important to recognize it isn't a dying medium, like you mentioned. It's growing fast and furious.
So I want to, I love that description. So let's move to the other side of the sort of value chain, because I think we're talking a lot about just in general sort of some of the measurable victories, or the success and the thriving, not surviving, which is the metaphor and construct I like to use for TV. But let's go to the buy side, kind of come full circle back to where Joe was. Like, you guys are also not only sort of taking a position of leadership on regards to just your peers and that side of the sell side of the value chain, but you're making investments for marketers as well, and to serve your advertisers better, to make sure they're, as Tim works for his clients, to get more out of every dollar they spend. Can you take me through a little bit of those things?
Sure. One of the things strategically we thought about at Comcast Advertising is the full funnel solution. You got the top: awareness, consideration, intent, and then actually measuring that sale. Lots of folks think about that on the national side of the equation. We went all the way down to the local marketplace as well and said, hey, that should hold true for them as well. And how do you prove that funnel actually works? Well, you start thinking about how do you attribute the viewing and the airing of the commercials in a local marketplace, and how does that drive web traffic? And that's what the announcement today was all about in terms of this new product that we have for all of our marketers across all of our markets. is called Instant Impact. And it really shows that attribution of when there's a viewing of a commercial, 30 minutes later, we can still begin to measure on a dashboard how effective that ad is running in terms of lift in traffic on the side of the web.
So it's not overtly on the agenda, but we can't actually talk about local television at a moment in time right now and not talk about political 2020.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say hello to the big gorilla in the room. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of this intention is to gear up and be ready for that, right? So how do you, I think in something I read, sort of like, how do you help candidates win? Talk me through that. What's the portfolio of your products and solutions that does that?
So first, let me step back for a second. In terms of political is incredibly important for us as a publisher, if you will, in the TV space. And one of the things we wanted to do in that study of looking at all of that viewership and then taking a look at, what happened in midterm 2018 elections in terms of the winners and the losers. How did their campaigns work across our platform? And we began to see that the winning candidates spent less money and time on the top 3 news networks. They spent less money on the primetime day parts. They spent less money in terms of shorter campaigns. So the winners, if you think about it in terms of what they needed to do, they needed to diversify their network selection. They need to diversify the day parts. The other thing that I thought was fascinating, and it kind of carries over to traditional marketing, was the length of the campaign. They needed to start their campaign earlier prior to the actual election day. And we showed a positive correlation in all of those 3 factors that, hey, there is indeed this relationship between the length of the campaign in terms of when you start, the dollars that you're spending, where you're spending it across multiple networks, and then diversifying across the day parts.
So I think for me, that was one of the biggest takeaways in prepping for this event and reading the research you guys had done, and then sort of, in talking to James as well, who co-authored it, and we'll talk to Andre here shortly, is the construct of data-driven TV. Right? New TV, linear, whatever the TV may be. So what was so interesting in the aha that I had was that it's not just about the data with which you target or you buy the media. It's holistically understanding, like this sort of distributed viewing time spent across cable nets versus broadcast, and the fact that it's not a Pareto. It's not 80-20 time spent versus 20% of networks. When everybody pisses and moans because they don't want to buy a 110 package, channel pack because they're not going to watch it, you do, actually.
Yeah.
The data shows that.
14% of our viewers are watching only the top 5 networks. That's 86% are watching everything else. On average,
and cable's big up to cable. They're killing it.
Absolutely. They're, on average, the households are watching 34 different networks on any given month. It's phenomenal in terms of how powerful and engaging that medium is for all of us.
So I think one of the things that what's very interesting is I think on the sell side, look, I've always believed that we have grossly underserved the sell side of our industry, particularly in the television business. Digital, less so, but still, I think publishers and sellers have been grossly underserved. And I feel like you guys now, just like your honey-do list gets bigger because you have to go out and evangelize this data. Like, you really have to re-educate the idea of what anchor buys are in television. That has to change because it's not just about audiences moving to digital or over-the-top devices. They're watching linear TV through a set-top box different as well.
That's absolutely right. And that education starts with the major agencies, and thank you, Group M, for hosting here today, but also down to the locally based, locally placed agencies. They have, they can't afford to make mistakes on behalf of their clients or those clients that are working directly. They have to be educated as well. The good news is that they're very willing to learn. A lot of times they spend their dollars on search or in social media, and now they're starting to say, hey, I'd love to be on television, but I can't afford it, or it's too hard. And so what we've recognized in that span of what we'll call the long tail of digital marketers, we can provide them a self-service platform so that they can easily get online and do that.
So just to sort of the other colored gorilla in the room, creative.
There's a lot of gorillas in the room today.
Yeah, there's a lot. So creative. I mean, you can't talk about going down the funnel and not talk about creative and actually, having a sort of a greater portfolio of assets with which to message as you know more and more about with whom you're talking. How do you guys support that process?
So we take it seriously in terms of, if you don't have good creative, your ad's not going to work, right? So no matter what you try to do, especially when you're thinking about attribution to digital. And one of the things we recognize in the tier of marketers that are sort of mid to smaller size, either they don't have good creative and they need some advice and insights, or they don't have television creative at all. So we created a team, and we'll be launching this officially in the next couple of weeks, whereby they're exclusively focused on being a full-service creative agency for these marketers. And in an effort to show that, hey, it's not that hard, we can do that for you, and therefore get you onto television.
So I'd like to ask you the same question that I asked Mr. Castry, with which we started. Blue sky, 36 months, where do you want to be? Or longer, or closer?
Like right here would be great, you know. No,
it's all in the family.
Yeah, exactly. No, you know, I think what strategically Comcast has been thinking about national, regional, and especially local, and we're thinking about addressable, and we're thinking about targetable. You know, like when I think about programmatic of 3 years ago, and everybody was trying to qualify that, I'd love for us in 18 months or so, not having to define what addressable is, because everybody knows what it is, and we're already transacting in that manner where it makes good sense for our clients and advertisers.
So I have no job security with Andy, is what you're telling me now. So last comment, another sort of realization that I think you just reinforced, particularly given the leadership position you guys are taking on the sell side. There are enough problems for all of us to be very busy and very occupied to solve over the next 36 months. So I would just like to support you and lend a hand to you and Marcianne on your efforts to just bring the industry together, because there's only positive outcomes for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
So get on the bus.
Thank you very much.
Choo-choo.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.